Hello, I'm Adrian Gonzalez, president of Untitled Chapter, and it's great to be back as your host for this December edition of Transporeon Journal as we wrap up 2021 and look ahead to 2022. If you go back in time to last December, we all couldn't wait to put 2020 behind us and start anew in 2021. Yet, in many ways, this year has proven to be just as challenging as 2020, especially in transportation. If you've been watching these Transporeon Journal episodes the past few months, you've heard me talk about congestion and delays at ocean ports, trucking capacity constraints and driver shortages, surging transportation costs, especially with ocean and trucking rates, rising fuel prices, and many other challenges and developments in the industry. And now, with 2022 just around the corner, there is a new coronavirus variant named Omicron that is prompting some countries to impose travel bans and close their borders. It's still too early to know if this variant will have a small or big impact on world affairs in the days and weeks ahead, but it's a reminder nonetheless that the COVID-19 pandemic remains a supply chain risk that companies must continue to monitor and prepare for. It also underscores the importance of having real-time supply chain visibility, especially to transportation-related metrics, such as border crossing times and the time duration between a shipment arriving at the port of origin and departing from the destination port. The more detailed visibility you have to what is actually going on in your supply chain, the better able you'll be to make smarter and faster decisions. There is another intertwined risk that people are starting to talk about: stagflation. What is stagflation? What does stagflation mean? Is stagflation coming? According to an article published by DW Academy on October 14th, quote, "Those are some of the questions many Germans have been looking up on Google," end quote. To quote from the article, according to Google Trends data, the interest in stagflation has been trending at its highest level since the 2008-2009 global financial crisis. People in the United Kingdom are seemingly most worried, with interest in the term trending at an all-time high, spooked by long lines at gas stations over the past weeks, which offered a grim reminder of the stagflation period of the 1970s, end quote. So what is stagflation? As defined by Merriam-Webster, stagflation is, quote, persistent inflation combined with stagnant consumer demand and relatively high unemployment, end quote. The challenge with stagflation is that policies taken to ease inflation could lead to slower growth and higher unemployment, while measures taken to boost economic growth and jobs could drive up prices. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. The chatter around stagflation has only increased in the days since the new coronavirus was announced. For example, quote, Omicron variant resurrects the risk of U.S. stagflation, end quote, is the headline of a November 28th article published by Bloomberg. The author is Mohammed El-Arian, chief economic advisor for financial services firm Allianz. As he writes in the article, quote, how the risk of stagflation plays out in the next few months, however, is less than certain. Though not because of the inflation component, whose continued upward movement is a near certainty, the bigger question is the growth component, where the underlying private sector drivers, while still solid enough on a standalone basis to power through another COVID disruption, could face potentially stronger headwinds because of the mounting risk of a policy mistake and tighter financial conditions in markets, end quote. Again, a lot of speculation and unknowns at the moment. But whether stagflation materializes or not, what happens with inflation, economic growth, and unemployment in the weeks and months ahead will have a corresponding impact on supply chains and on transportation in particular. Speaking of transportation, what is the state of the current market? In a nutshell, ongoing uncertainty and volatility, which has been the story all year. The net impact has been tight capacity and rising transportation costs. On the morning I'm recording this episode, I took a look at data from Transporeon Insights to get some perspective. If you look at the capacity index on Transporeon Insights, for example, a reading under 100 indicates a capacity-constrained environment. Over the first 7 months of 2020, the index ranged between 100.2 and 119.8. Over the same period in 2021, however, the index ranged between 99.8 and 87.4, and it has remained below 100 since July. This tight capacity environment has caused spot rates to increase significantly in many lanes. Over the past 13 months, for example, the top 10 lanes that have experienced the greatest increases in spot rates have seen increases between 34% and 78%. Of course, not all lanes have experienced increases in spot rates this year. Again, looking at data from from Transporeon Insights on the morning of this recording, the top 10 lanes that have experienced the greatest decreases in spot rates over the past 13 months have seen decreases between 1% and 20%. Overall, more lanes have experienced increases in spot rates than decreases over the past year, and the percentage of rate increases have generally been much greater than the percentage of rate decreases. Will these trends continue in 2022? It's hard to predict with any certainty, but as I highlighted in the October episode, there is another challenge the industry will face beginning in February 2022. Further implementation of the EU Mobility Package, which covers driving and rest time rules for drivers, CO2 standards for heavy-duty vehicles, and the digitization of transport documents, among many other things. Per the Mobility Package, truck drivers will need to take longer breaks and trucks will have to return to their home country every 8 weeks. How will this change impact driver availability and capacity? Time will tell, but there's a general belief that the Mobility Package will change the landscape of the European transport market. Among the concerns is the restrictions related to cabotage operations. Once the cabotage limit is reached, carriers will have to bear the costs of vehicle downtime, which will ultimately translate into rate increases. Another risk is that the new regulations will make the transport system less flexible and reduce the amount of available capacity. So as we head into 2022, there are dark clouds and headwinds facing the transportation industry. The question is, how do we build a better tomorrow in transportation? That is the central theme of this year's Pulse 2022 research report. I don't want to steal its thunder, but I'll just say that the cornerstones of a better tomorrow in transportation are trust, relationships, networks, and sustainability. I encourage you to download and read the report once it's published, and I look forward to your feedback and perspective. And with that, I want to wish you all happy holidays and a happy and healthy new year.